Christopher Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
It's 3 defeats, but we are still upbeat. Well, kind of. It's the warm-up episode 114. It's Brady and Tom. It's the Middlesbrough preview. And this week, we're joined by EFL expert Gab Sutton. Gab, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thanks, Brady. Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. Me and Tom are certainly going to have to up our game. Tom, how are you doing anyway? Sorry to put you down there at the start of the show.
I'm not too bad, mate. I'm not too bad, you know. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised by the performance on Saturday, so I'm quite upbeat, I guess.
Here, and we'll come on to that later. But yeah, no, it's as good as you can feel after a 1-0 defeat, really, I suppose. But yeah, looking at this one, it's a tip to Teesside for the Terriers as they host don't host Middlesbrough, they play Middlesbrough. I nailed my T's there. That's why I was getting confident. Yeah, Middlesbrough, a team backed by many to at least make the playoffs, but like Huddersfield, they've lost the first 2 league games and currently sit at the bottom of the table with 4 goals conceded and none scored. So Huddersfield fans, you think we've got it bad. That's what the situation is for them after 2 games. Obviously, Town fans don't have to go too far back to see the last time we played Middlesbrough. It was about a week ago. Boro won 3-2 in the Carabao Cup at the John Smith Stadium. Interesting one with that as well, because I think a lot of people felt we did okay in that, to say we had 10 men for most of the game. So, but yeah, Gab, I'll come to you first. I'll give you a nice, easy question for the first for your debut. Middlesbrough lost 3-0 to Coventry at the weekend, so I'll give you a nice question to get you on side with the Town fans. Is there anything to make from their start to the season, or is it too early to tell with just the 2 games in?
I think the main problem for Middlesbrough in both the games they've had against Millwall and Coventry is that I don't think they've struggled so much to create chances or to have some good passages of play. And, you know, I don't think they've been way off it in either of their games, but it's clear that they've not got a goal-scoring sort of focal point, if you like. I would have thought they'd needed to have added a striker, whether or not they sold Chuba Akpom, who's obviously got all the goals for them last season. He's now gone to Ajax. Yeah, I think that they just very much look short of a real goal-scoring presence. I think if I look at who they had up top at Coventry, it was sort of Morgan Rogers as a sort of number 10, and he played Matt Crooks. He's a midfielder by trade. He did play up top at the start of his career, sort of going back to his League 2 days, but you know, I wouldn't necessarily consider him a top 6 Championship centre forward. And I suppose it's slightly surprising that Middlesbrough brought in all these players. They've got a lot of attacking options and a lot of sort of creative, exciting players in their squad, but no real goal scorer. So I would suggest that from the Huddersfield perspective, this actually isn't a bad time to play them, because I would expect them to bring a striker in the last couple of weeks of the window, and from that point, it's possible that things pick up for them again. So not a bad time to play them, I think.
Oh, that's music to our ears. Tom, we know Neil Warnock as well likes to get one on his old teams, especially one that he feels has wronged him, which I was at the Town Hall thing. He certainly made that clear with Middlesbrough. Are you encouraged by that news and their mixed form?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll hear that in the fan chat with Jonny. We know how much he loves Neil. So, yeah, I think they'll be worried because they just know what kind of character Warnock is and how he seems up for it against teams that maybe he feels a bit wronged. He's been wronged by in the past, kind of thing. So, I'm looking forward to it. I think, like Gab says, it's almost is a perfect time to play him. I think there's already a bit of nerves kicking in up there, like no goals yet in the league. I know they got the 3 past us, but it's that cup and Town. Town are terrible in that cup, aren't they? So it's Town and Town are terrible in that cup. So yeah, so I think they're at home. Pressure will be on. They'll think Town have had a bad start as well. They'll be thinking they can win this. So it's not like Leicester where we can be thinking nothing to lose, but I think you can. These types of games, you can play it in your favour if you do things at the right moment. Like I said against Plymouth, Brady, it's like, as long as we don't concede early on, And then we did. But it's one of those, if we can keep them quiet, get them on the back of their own players, then you never know.
The other thing, just to add to what you said there, Tom, is there's a lot of pressure on Middlesbrough as well, which I maybe hadn't sort of explored. But they lost their first 2 games, and if they lose a third one, you're all thinking they're already going to be 6 points off the top 6 and 7 points off the top 2. And this is a team that was probably expecting to challenge for the top 2 this season. So I think there's a lot of pressure on them to get this result right.
Yeah, sorry, Brady. I was going to off the back of that, Gab. I think I saw someone mention if you take into account last season, Carrick won't have won a league game in, I think it's 7 at this point or something like that. I saw a stat like that. So the pressure might start to mount on him a bit if he doesn't pick it up a bit as well.
Yeah, possibly. I suppose it's over 2 seasons, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think Carrick probably has a lot of goodwill in the bank because there was a significant turnover from when he took charge around October last season. They were actually sort of just above the relegation zone when he took charge, and they absolutely shot up the league. And at one stage, it looked like they were going to challenge Sheffield United for automatics, and obviously just missed out on that. And then they kind of found themselves in the last month of the season in this position where they're comfortable playoffs, they're not going to get autos, and I think form just naturally drops. But then when they went into the playoffs, I suppose they didn't have that. It's a cliche, but I'm going to call it momentum to kind of go into it with. And I think that, it's important that they sort of shake a bit of that malaise sort of as quickly as possible because, results have been disappointing.
Mm-hmm. And Gab, you touched on the kind of lack of a goal scorer at the time. I think we kind of all saw with Rakpom, they wasn't sure about that, so they've kind of left him at the side, and that is confirmed, as you mentioned. But are there any other weaknesses in that team that, looking at the start of the season so far, that you think Town fans could look and be like, maybe we could exploit that?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how Seny Dieng gets on in goal, because although he's clearly had previous seasons as an excellent goalkeeper, I wouldn't necessarily say he's come to Middlesbrough in the peak of his form. He's going to bring good sort of distribution to Boro, but I'm not sure he's necessarily in peak form in terms of shot stopping. And then I think the fullback areas are interesting. And I come back to it. It's funny because they've signed a lot of, it's not like they've not signed enough players this summer. I think they brought in 7 or 8, and yet you look at the fullback positions, I think they might have a couple of injuries and things like that, but they've got Paddy McNair, who's sort of shifted over to right back, and then they've got Coulson at left back, who probably wouldn't be in their first 11 in other circumstances. So it feels like they're a little bit short in there at the moment. I'm not sure quite what the state of play is in terms of returnees and whether the squad might look different on Tuesday night, but I would think instinctively that's probably an area to try and target.
Oh, no, good to hear. Well, you're getting me too excited for this. So, we need to bring some realism because it is Huddersfield. But, Tom, let's distract ourselves, because I think I heard the figurative, the metaphorical linesman. He's pointing his flag for a corner, which can only mean one thing. What's it time for, Tom?
Oh, it's time for History Corner, isn't it, Brady?
There you
go. So, Town versus Boro. I think the last 2 teams we played, surprisingly, we haven't played them that much, but we've actually played Middlesbrough 101 times by my calculations, Brady, which is quite a lot of football, isn't it? Town have beaten Boro 35 times, drawn 21, but come out losers on this occasion, and we've lost to them 45 times in our history. So the first ever meeting was back in 1920s. And Boro won 2-0 there in front of a crowd of over 35,000 people. And it took Town just over 2 years to record their first win over Boro in the history, where Town won 2-1 at Leeds Road. It was really interesting, it's a bit of swings and roundabouts. So Boro had a pretty terrible run against Town from 1961 to 1985, where Town only lost 3 times to Boro, winning 10 times and drawing 10 times. And then it flipped in 1986. Boro took the charge, and Town only won on 4 occasions, I think. And Boro won 15 and drew 3. So that's up until now, it's a pretty terrible run, isn't it? Here's a quite interesting one. In 1957, there was the highest scoring game between the two teams, where Town lost 7-2 in a Division 2 clash that saw Brian Clough score 4 goals for Boro, and it was whilst Bill Shankly was managing Town. So yeah, I don't know if that helped with him getting that Liverpool job, that scoreline, but then played for both. Quite interesting, quite a few. A lot more recently, I think. You got, obviously, we've already mentioned him, Matt Crooks from Town Academy originally, and he did play up front for us for a bit, Gab, but yeah, I think that was one of the reasons why he ended up potentially being shipped out, because I don't think he saw his potential further back. Adam Clayton, beautiful beard at Town, beautiful beard at Boro. We've got 2 promotion winners from Town, Tommy Smith and Martin Craney, both played for Boro. Jordan Rhodes, and there's someone else I was going to think of, but I've just forgot it. Oh, Lee Peltier. I totally forgot that he went to play for Boro, which I thought was quite an interesting one, Brady. Lee Peltier, I feel like he's fishing around somewhere still these days. Is it Rotherham? Rotherham, yeah. I don't know how he's still going. He feels like he's been playing football for like 30 years. And then Mick Kennedy, who missed out on promotion with Town by 3 points. And then the summer after, in 1982, he moved to Boro for a fee of £100,000. Can you think of any others?
I can't. I'm more recent, you know me. So Tommy Smith's the obvious one, and Matt Crooks. But yeah, no, you covered them. Martin Craney, good, underrated, I think. At Town, did a job.
Underrated. And I'm just going to bring in one more little section for History Corner. We can maybe add a jingle to this. Has Alan Lee scored against Boro for Town? Yes, he has. He scored in the beautiful 2-1 win that misty night when Town came from 1-0 down, and Alan Lee popped up and scored that beautiful 86th minute equaliser.
Played for Rotherham, didn't he, Alan Lee?
He did.
Big centre forward.
What a legend. Welcome to this podcast, Gab.
Listeners, we don't have a section with Alan Lee anymore. How will Tom possibly shoehorn in Alan Lee? There you go, right there. Anyway, yeah, no, that's good. So we've heard from us on what we think about Middlesbrough, but it's time to hear the fan phone in. So Tom, I'm going to come straight to you. You spoke to Jonny from the Boro Breakdown, didn't you?
I did. I had a good chat with Jonny from the Boro Breakdown, and here it is. Hi, Jonny, mate. Thanks for coming on. What are the positives that you take from last season coming into this one?
So what positives do we take from the previous year? There was a lot of positives. I think Michael Carrick and what he did with the squad that we had to get us in the position that he did was absolutely amazing. I think when you look back to the October-November time where Boro were in the relegation zone, and then to go on that insane run, and then to bring in some really good players in the January window, just to fall short in the playoff semi-finals was a little bit disheartening, but I think overall it was a fantastic season.
Yeah, Carrick really showed what he was about, didn't he, last year? So what are you kind of looking forward to going into this year with a full season under his belt?
This season, I'm really looking forward to just seeing what we can do under Carrick this year, after a full season. Obviously, we've lost like 4 or 5 loan players who really contributed to how good we were. Obviously, Cameron Archer, Aaron Ramsey, Ryan Giles, Zach Steffen. I think they were all really good coups for us, but we have reinvested, and there's still some players to come in, which I think will excite fans even more. I think Lucas Engel, who's just came in, the left back, who's a very similar profile to Giles. Sonny Dieng is exactly the same to Zach Steffen. Ideally, I would love Cameron Archer to come back, but if he probably won't. But I think there's plenty to be excited about. I think we've got a young squad, a good manager, a good team, and a good base. So fingers crossed, we do all right. I know we have lost our first 2 league games, but there's still time. We can still go on a run, and that excites me a little bit as well.
So touching on that squad and what you've brought in so far this summer, who are you most excited about? Who's your favourite player that you've got at the moment?
My favourite Boro player has to be Riley McGree. He is absolutely amazing. He plays on the left-hand side. He floats across the central and the right-hand side of the pitch, and he helps make Boro tick. I think what you'll see with him is that his creative ability is just insane, where he's able to get himself in a really good position, create a chance for someone else, and then also he's got a cracking left foot. He is able to hit a volley and score screamers. Pretty much every season he's got an insane highlight reel. I feel like when he's old and grey and he's showing it to his grandkids, they'll think he's probably better than Messi, but it's just insane what he can do with his left peg. But yeah, he's definitely my favourite.
Well, it all sounds quite exciting, that does, Jonny, from a Boro perspective. But given the start to your season, 2 defeats, first time in a while that's happened for Boro. What do you actually think of Carrick? How do you think he's going to cope this season?
Obviously, we have lost 2 games in the league, the first time since 2007, 2008. We did, obviously, of course, beat Huddersfield in the cup. Yeah, sorry to bring that back up. But Carrick's great, I think he's still finding his feet in management. He's having to change things around this year, obviously, given that he's had to rebuild a squad again, which we're still doing. I think he still has to make fine tweaks to the system that he's doing. Obviously, we've played a little bit more narrow in previous games, and I feel like that's benefited the opponent more. But, he's still got plenty to learn. He's got a really good coaching staff around him. I think Aaron Danks is probably the best coach in the league. And I feel like he can learn so much from him. So, yeah, I'm massively positive about Carrick. I feel like he'll do well, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be in the playoffs again in the summer.
Playoffs, big shout, mate. You've already touched on your squad. You think you've recruited pretty well, but who are you really excited about? Who you've brought in? Who is going to push you on to those playoff positions that you're hoping for?
Interestingly, my favourite summer signing is someone who signed today. It's actually Lucas Engel. He's came from Silkeborg in Denmark, and he is the exact same profile as Ryan Giles, but can defend a little bit better. Well, statistically, he's better defensively than Giles. He looks like a really good coup for us, and I think given that we rely so heavily on wing backs going forward and trying to stretch teams, he's just the perfect fit for us. So I'm very, very excited to see what he can do in a Boro shirt in the next few weeks. He'll probably be starting his first game against you guys, so fingers crossed it's a good signing. But if I couldn't pick him, I think it'd be Sammy Silvera. He's a winger, came from an Australian team, and he just looks really, really promising. We have made a number of signings so far this year who look like will be good signings in maybe 2 to 3 years. But I think right now, Sammy Silvera is the one who's probably the pick of the bunch.
Yeah, Silvera looked very good against us. There was a lot of jealous Town fans watching on that night, and having to head for a drink afterwards, I assume. So, speaking of drinking, where is the best away pub if for any Town fans who are coming up to Boro on Saturday?
For pubs, for away fans, there's a couple. Obviously, last season normally there was Dr. Brown's, but I feel like they might have shut. But Hit the Bar's really good. But I'd recommend Playbrew. It is a little bit further away from the ground. But we are obviously sponsored by them on our podcast, so it'd be bad not to push them. But really good bar. It's essentially full of IPAs, really good environment, and it'll be open on the Saturday as well. So yeah, that's what I'd recommend.
Sounds great, mate. And you've always got to plug those sponsors, haven't you? So anyway, let's get to the brass tacks. What are your expectations for this season?
My expectations for the season, I do think we'll be playoffs. I think we'll go on a bit of a run after about 10 to 12 games in. I think naturally, as we're still trying to build a squad, things are going to start slow. We have lost quite a lot of players. But the last couple of games, we haven't been particularly great. But I think once the players have came in, they've bedded in as well. I feel like we're just going to go on a run and we'll just click. So hopefully that will happen. We could either go 2 ways, to be honest. I think we'll either do really, really well and recruitment will be a masterstroke, or we'll finish like 10th. So it's like one of those things this year. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we get playoffs.
Well, good luck with that, mate. Big ask. It's always a big ask. I think it's a very tough league this year, so it's going to be really interesting to see where everyone finishes up. And finally, let me ask you your prediction for Saturday.
predictions for Saturday. I really hate Neil Warnock, and I hate him so much because he comes to the Riverside every time and he always wins, and it really annoys me because the football is not amazing. It's just like he somehow has our number, and it's just really annoying. But I will take anything. I will take something like us going off someone's backside and going in and we win 1-0. I would take anything. So, but I'm going to go with a 2-0 win. I think we'll hopefully put up a good performance, and then they'll relax a few of the Boro fans, and we'll finally beat Warnock again. Well, guys, thank you very much for having me on. We'll speak soon.
Cheers, Jonny. And I will leave you with this lovely new Warnock anecdote from Saturday afternoon.
Well, if any fan's disappointed with that, they need locking up.
Well said.
There we go, Brady. Lovely chat with Jonny, as always.
Yeah, he's a good lad, is Jonny. I have a lot of time for him. Cool. So, well, I've realised I've kind of messed up the schedule there, but let's smooth it out. Gab, is there anything town fans should look out for? Should be worried about with Middlesbrough, because we've talked about their weaknesses, but like you say, this was a team that finished comfortably in the playoffs.
Yeah, of course. They've got a midfielder called Dan Barlaser. Talking of Rotherham, he's came from them back in January. He's kind of a bit of a deep line playmaker. He'll keep things ticking over. And then you've got Hayden Hackney in there, who's full of energy. Silvera as well is a recruit from Australia. He's quite an exciting addition on the left. And then Isaiah Jones is a very direct right-sided player who loves to run at opponents, so you'll have to make sure that your left-back's on his guard. But I think, Jones didn't necessarily have the best season last year, but in 21-22, he was sort of one of the best players in this league, so he'll be looking to recapture that form.
Yeah, definitely. We saw that in the Carabao Cup victory for them. He ran us ragged. Headley actually fouled him for the red card. So, I'm not looking forward to seeing him. Tom, you're from the Leicester game. You were slightly encouraged by the performance, but are you concerned about Middlesbrough as well? I do think they'll be looking at this as something where they can get a season up and running.
Yeah, they will be, and I think what you could think is quite promising. From what I remember last year, Middlesbrough did carry football. He does like to build from the back, doesn't he? And keep possession as much as possible. I think we did really well against Leicester. It was one of those where the Town pressed just at the right time every time. It was like, if they need the ball, there's nothing going to happen. Let them have the ball. Sometimes that frustrates teams more than anything when they've just got the ball and can't do anything with it. But the times we pressed and put them under pressure, I think if we can replicate that, if we're pressing at the right time on Saturday, it could be really effective for us. I think you just can't put anything past Warnock. I mean, he's been in this game so long. By now he should know tactically how to beat almost any setup. So I'm looking forward to it.
Just on that, Tom, I was reading a piece in the Examiner from Stephen Chicken, and he was talking about the impact that Warnock has had on Josh Garoma, where previously you might have considered Josh Garoma something of a luxury player, and then here he is sort of running around charging into tackles, and I guess he's been Warnockified, if you like, because he's sort of, he's found that edge to his game. So if you can combine the quality that he's got with that aggressive edge, that sounds really exciting. But I suppose just an example of the impact Warnock can have on players.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned about Jones, Gab, as well, kind of going off it last year. I think Town had a really similar situation with Sorba last year, didn't they, Brady? So it'll be interesting to see Sorba under Warnock for a season, and if he can, because I think last year, Sorba obviously seemed to fall out of favour with managers, or potentially just fall out with managers. But like I also think there was a bit of potentially other teams almost sussing him out, and it's I wonder if that also happened with Jones to a point last year. And it's one of those, can both managers find that next kind of phase to these guys' careers? Because they've both got something there. It's just you can't be a kind of one-trick pony and be consistent at this level, can you?
Yeah. And it was really interesting, like talking about Sorba. I was listening to one of Neil Warnock's press conferences, and he was, typical Neil Warnock. He can say things that other managers just wouldn't be able to get away with.
I know,
yeah. He mentioned about how Sorba Thomas can fall out in a room with no one else. So it's just kind of maybe gives you an idea. But, I think it was clear he fell out under favour with Mark Fotheringham, and, hindsight, doesn't win the war. But I think I would have backed Sorba Thomas over Mark Fotheringham, it's fair to say. But I think you're right, Tom. Like, Sorba seems like that type of character who needs his arm put around him and that man management. Because we've seen at the end of last season what what Warnock did with Corona, and I'm like you. I feel like Sorba could do the same, and maybe we could see something. I think he's looked all right as well, to be honest, in the games.
I think that's really interesting you mentioned that, Brady, because for me, the crucial difference between Warnock and Mark Fotheringham is that Warnock has different tempos of man management, if you like, because I think with Fotheringham, it feels like he's going to go very hard on his players, be very disciplined, and it felt like almost that was his only way of working. And whereas with Warnock, don't get me wrong, he can be really angry at times, and he's very upfront, and he, calls players out and this, that, and the other. But he also knows when to have a bit of a laugh and a joke as well. And I think that way of kind of being able to relax people and then being able to focus them and sort of dance between those two sort of ways of working, I think that's clearly a real strength of his.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, who would you rather be managed by, Mark Fotheringham or Neil Warnock? I think everyone will have the same answer for me. But yeah, no, that's interesting. That's a really good point, Gab. But yeah, we will come on to the listeners' interesting questions because it's time for Kwana's question. So this week we asked.
Why Kwana, by the way?
Because Colin Kwana, do you not remember?
Yeah, I know Colin Kwana, but it seems very random.
The only town player who's got a Q in his name, I think Gab is the only reason we called it Kwana's question.
No, come on, Tom. There's a much more intricate reason why.
He come off the bench at Sheffield Wednesday in the playoff semi-final and get an assist or something.
Yeah, I think he's. Well, I don't want to say anything that could get us into trouble, but I think he questions certain things in terms of questioning, certain things that perhaps is against the mainstream media, if you like. I'll leave it there. Anyway, the question we asked. Yeah, we'll move swiftly. The question we asked was, when did a former Huddersfield Town player or manager come back to haunt you while you were at a game? Because obviously, Tom, as you mentioned in the play for both, there's quite a few players and a manager there. So I'm going to read out the listener responses, and I'll come to you both. So Sean Mackin says Kevin Sharp turning around as they were setting up to defend a corner and grinning and laughing at the Town fans as we were losing 6-2 to Scunthorpe. A Town fan chucked his pie at him. So there you go. You've upset someone if they're throwing the pie at him.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have minded, but it wasn't his favourite flavour.
Clive Wadsworth, he says Jordan Rose hat trick for Blackburn, March 2014. Oh, I hated that. That was yeah. Jordan Rose always seems to score. And I just loved this one because it was just the name, and it was just Cameron Steele and saying Lucas Jukovic. Yep.
Yeah.
Do you know what's so funny about that, Tom? I feel like Lucas Jukovic is such a Town striker now, but we had him at the start of his career. Do you know what I mean? I feel like in your mid to late 30s.
Yeah, but I mean, he what did he do? He threw his shirt at Lee Clark, didn't he? When he was brought off after something like 30 minutes in a game, and that was, I think he play a couple of games on loan, and then that was it. Yeah. And then there's always just been that bit of. Yeah, I think he's got a bit of anger against Town because of just that moment.
Yeah. But yeah, Tom, I'll come to you actually. What's your example of a former Town player or manager coming back to haunt you?
Rhodes is gutting, innit? That one that made me feel sick. That one did. Butterfield, I mean, that was kind of fair play to him. The one where promotion season where I think did we draw with Derby 1-1, and Town fans were just singing how fat he was all game. And he got, see, this is what I think, right? I never join in with the booing or the chanting against a former player because inevitably they score a goal against you or have an absolutely amazing game. So I completely avoid that no matter the circumstances. And it was like the whole game just absolutely laying into Butterfield for basically making a mistake of leaving town. Because, what happened to him after? Like, he was the next thing, wasn't he, in the Championship when he was at town for some reason? He had a great start and then just rubbish. So, and then I thought of one that isn't kind of related. It's quite funny, actually. Do you remember when Adam Clayton scored for us against Leeds whilst Warnock was managing Leeds? And he ran all the way to the halfway line and did that Adebayor knee slide in front of Warnock because Warnock shipped him out.
We lost that game, didn't
we? We did, but it was a beautiful moment.
That was funny. No, my one. I'm with you. I don't join in. Like, particularly, I think the example I always refer to is, in the last dance with Michael Jordan, how he's like, I needed something extra. Like, I'd pretend like beef with other players to get me hyped. And I just always think of that, like, you're just giving them an extra motivation to do well and prove you wrong. And Alex Pritchard for me last season, I went to that game against Sunderland. I knew it was coming. They were just giving him dogs abuse all game. It was a really tight game. Weirdly, I don't think Sunderland played that well in that match either. And they were just giving him stick all game, and who opens the score? And it's Alex Pritchard, and goes straight to the crowd. And it's just like, there's nothing you can do. And what always makes me laugh is, like, the fans then get really more annoyed, and they're like, start swearing and get really angry. And it's like, you have caused this. you have brought this on yourself.
I've got a couple of that I'd like to add. Firstly, from the point of view of giving players stick, and naturally they're going to score. Blues had this thing with the Villa player Gabriel Agbonlahor, and there are a few games running where he'd score the winner. But Blues fans, we had probably quite an inappropriate song about him, but we'd always sing about him, and we could, you could see that it kind of got him riled up, and he ended up scoring all the time, which was really, really annoying because it was like late winners and stuff. And then the other one was Robbie Savage, because we absolutely adored Robbie Savage for Birmingham, because he would just cover every blade of grass. He'd run everywhere, and always putting in challenges, and absolutely loved him for it. And then he went to Blackburn, and there was a bit of deceit over that, because he said that he wanted to live near his family, and his family lived in Wrexham, and Birmingham's actually nearer to Wrexham than Blackburn. So there was a bit of and obviously, as you can imagine, when Robbie Savage lined up to play against Blues towards the end of the 05-06 season, sang a lot of rude songs about Robbie Savage, and naturally, that got him riled up, and he ended up scoring a late equaliser, and then he was just running off and celebrating wildly, and then I think we end up winning that game, so we kind of had that last laugh, but it was it certainly caused a bit of drama, that's for sure.
I always think of, and Tom will know the podcast I'm referring to, but it's Roy Keane talking about how he was going to sign Robbie Savage, and then and it went to voicemail, and he did the "What's up" from like, I'm not signing this guy, which is fair enough. I mean, Roy Keane, I wouldn't mess with him. But yeah, we will. I think we'll go to our kind of halftime break, and as I always say, when it's halftime, normally, depending on how Town are doing, if they're doing bad, I'm not afraid to admit I might nip down a bit early, get myself to the bar for refreshment. While we have an ad break, don't forget you can get 10% off all our online orders with the code AHTTC10 at magicrockbrewing.com. Yes, because it's an away game, so why don't you get them ordered in for the trip up if you're going by train? There you go. Right, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Huddersfield very, very shortly. We're back from the break, but we're not going to look at the Huddersfield Town men's team just yet, because we've got a little chance to speak to Huddersfield Town women. Yeah, that's right. It's a preview within a preview episode. Is that previewception? I don't really know. Listeners, if you have a better name for this, please do get in. But anyway, let's focus on the task at hand here. I caught up with Beth Ibbotson, one of the Huddersfield Town women's players, ahead of their opening match this coming Sunday, the 20th of August, against AFC Fylde. I spoke to Beth just to see how pre-season's been going, how they're feeling ahead of the new season, how they think they'll get on, and interestingly, asking her about what support the club has received since Kevin Nagle took over the club, and it's quite interesting to hear. So here it is, about 5 minutes, give it a listen, and if you do want to attend, you can go down this coming Sunday. Kick-off is 2 p.m, and I will be there, some of the lads will be there, so why don't you come down and support the women's team, especially while we're playing away at Middlesbrough. Hi Beth, thanks for joining us on the podcast. So the new season kicks off on Sunday for Huddersfield Town Women. How's your pre-season been going?
It's great to be on here. Thank you for having me and for giving us a platform to have a voice. In terms of pre-season, I would say it's been quite challenging, but rewarding, I would say, at the same time. We're building a new team and we've shown the talent we possess, which is evident in some of the results we've had. But it's also been quite tough. We've had some heavy results, but ones we've learnt from. And from the analysis, hopefully we can use the feedback to improve and take this into the season starting on Sunday.
And how are you and the team feeling ahead of this new campaign then?
As a whole, we're just excited to get going and to see what we can produce. It's obviously widely known that a lot of teams in the North Tier 3 League have signed some top players and have received increased investment. So each team is going to be very different from last season, meaning that everyone's going to have to figure out each other at some point. So that makes it very exciting and hopefully it'll be competitive throughout. Some may suggest that we are underdogs in comparison. However, I think that can actually work in our favour. A few of the girls actually the other day were mentioning how they're actually looking forward to the challenge, and me myself as well. I'm going to throw myself right into it. And of course there will be nerves, that's normal, but we're a hard-working team with a lot of quality and hopefully we can cause some upsets this season. So yeah, really looking forward to get started on Sunday.
Good to hear. So what does success look like for the Terriers this season then?
I think success, to be honest, will come in many different forms this year. I think arguably the North Tier is the most competitive it's been for a very long time, and so it's of most importance that we ensure that Huddersfield Town Women are in Tier 3 next season. And our target would be to finish higher than 6th, which we achieved last season. I think you always want to beat your previous positioning from the season before. And in terms of cup competitions, for sure, a target of ours is to retain the County Cup. And reaching the 4th round of the FA Cup and potentially playing a WSL team is always a target of ours. I think it's a great occasion. And getting to the finals of the League Cup would be a successful start to rebuild the identity we've got going, which is another perspective you could look at. I think success would come with the team building an identity, badging into what Glenn presents us and implementing that on a match day.
We know match day income is important to any team, and having fans attend and fill the stadium as much as possible is really important to teams. For those who are unable to attend the games, how can they support you and support your teammates and the club as a whole?
Yes, like you say, attending the games is a big way to support us, and it enables us to engage with fans as well and to show what we can do. There are other ways to help support the team, including individual sponsors, but also for each men's home game, 100 tickets have been allocated to us that we are selling on. So they're £10 for adults and £5 for child tickets, with all the funds going to the women's team to financially support us. We're on a mission to sell as many as possible, and by buying these tickets it helps us but also makes it cheaper for fans to go watch the men play, giving more people the opportunity to do so. There is more information on this on the Huddersfield Town Women's social medias, which if people were to follow those as well, that would be great support for us.
No, really good point, and we'll put it in our kind of description for this episode and also put some stuff on our socials because I think it's good to point people in the right direction to where they can follow the team this season. So yeah, finally, my last question is, we've had your teammates mention on the podcast last season about a lack of support from the men's team in the past. Since then, obviously, we've had the new owner for the men's side, Kevin Nagle, take charge of the club. I was just wondering, have you seen any changes since that change of ownership? I know it's only been a couple of weeks, but just curious to hear if there has been any changes.
I have seen some promising changes already. Meetings have been taking place over the pre-season, and we have received funding which can cover costs such as player travel and kit. So there has been progress, which we're thankful for. But unfortunately, at the moment, the support is still limited, as I know the men's team have their own situations to resolve before they can fully invest in the women's team. So there is still a lot of work to be done and a stronger relationship to be built between the female and male counterparts of Huddersfield Town. But hopefully soon, full integration of the two teams will take place, and there will be full financial support which can help the women's team flourish. Because I think the increasing profile of the women's game just shows how important it is for the men's team to invest in their female counterparts. And we hope that Kevin and the rest of those associated with Town Men can see how important it is to invest all they can in Huddersfield Town Women to help us move forward and eventually integrate into a part-time or even better, a full-time regime. This is the goal for us anyway, and I'm hoping this is something the men are aiming for too.
Perfect. Thanks, Beth, and thanks for taking the time to speak to us today, and best of luck on Sunday. Okay, cool. So we're swapping over. So let's talk about Huddersfield then. So ahead of the recording, we asked the listeners, do you feel more positive about Town's start to the season? It is 3 defeats, but there's been some positives to take from that. So I'll read you out the results of our Twitter poll, and then I'll ask Gab and Tom what they think. So the 3 options were feel more positive, feel more negative, or haven't changed my opinion. So what one was actually I feel more positive. 57.3% of people feel more positive despite the 3 defeats to the start of the season. 8.7% feel more negative, and 34% haven't changed their opinion. So Tom, which camp do you sit in with this one?
It's a good question, Brady, because I think if I'm following on from how we were playing last year, I probably haven't changed my opinion, because I just thought Warnock set us up so well. I think I'd feel a bit more positive if we had a bit more squad depth, if I knew that there was just, because the one thing that struggled with last year is those injuries we got, and then we didn't have anyone to come in.
Do you not feel like, to my eyes, you've actually got squad depth? It's just that, I don't know, you've maybe not got good squad depth, I suppose.
Yeah. So then, yeah, Gab, that's what it is. I mean, there is those backups, but there's not any kind of. There's a lot of young players in this team. Who need to be playing with those experienced pros. And when you really look at it, in the midfield, you've only got Jonathan Hogg. I mean, you've got Danny Ward up front. Looks like Jordan Rhodes is leaving, potentially.
I feel Hoggy's a bit of a spent force nowadays, sadly.
Look, I mean, what is he? What is he, Brady? 32?
34,
34 even. Yeah. So look, we've said this. We've said this pretty much every podcast. I think that they've got to bring in someone to fill the gap between Hogg and your next experienced player down, who is probably Kasumu, who is 24, 23. So like that's too big of a gap. I mean, the lads did so well last week. I thought Diarra was absolutely brilliant.
He started the season well, hasn't he, Diarra?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm in that. I think that it hasn't changed, Brady. I do think people are saying they're more positive, and I would say a factor of that is the Warnock factor, which is a good thing, because look, I'm not nervous at all, simply because Warnock's in charge, and these performances, although we lost to Plymouth, I thought we played well for 70 minutes. We just had some really bad little moments. So yeah, I've not changed, because I was quite positive at the end of last year.
No, I'll ask Gab shortly, but yeah, just from the fan, I haven't changed my opinion either. I think it's encouraging when you can, put in a performance like we did against Leicester, and ultimately it's just a mistake that is the reason we lost that game. And we had some chances. I think of that Helic one where he hit that, shinned it over the bar. If that's any other, if that's an attacking play, you'd like to think that's at least on target. I think that's it. It's that we've talked about it a lot, but it is the quality. I think that's the thing. Our starting 11's actually okay, but as we've kind of said, although Diarra's been really good, Ian Harris looked good in spells. Carl Hudlin's looked good in spells. I think it's
really.
Yeah. Surprisingly so. He's come off the bench and looked all right. Yeah. Well, you're surprised, Gab. We're surprised too, in fairness. But I think this, although we've got a really experienced man manager and he'll know what to get out of these, I think it's asking a lot of Neil and youngsters. I mean, some of those players haven't played more, haven't made a championship start or played more than 10 games in the championship, and I think ideally you want to be in a situation where anything they do is a bonus rather than having to rely on them. So I haven't changed my opinion. I think we're not going to get the kind of listless performances we got last season before Warnock came in. However, I do think if we have those additions in the window, which it sounds like, I mean, Kevin Nagel tweeted that we can expect some incomings this week. So I feel like that will, that's the issue. We do kind of get to 70 minutes or whatever, and I don't think we've got anyone who can change the game or who's going to score. I think that's it. The performances are a lot better, and I feel they will be at the same level. But I think it's just having the people to take the game by the scruff of the neck. But Gab, what about you? You've seen anything that's kind of changed your mind? Because I know you tipped for the relegation.
I mean, certainly performances of Diarra first 2 games, I think, are a big positive. He looks like a really exciting, lively ball carrier, so I think that's great. Although I think he played really well against Leicester and went toe-to-toe with them, so fair play to you for that. I still think over the course of the mid-season, midfield is a bit of an area where I would have a slight question mark, because you've got Diarra in that number 10 role, and I think if you're sticking with Rodoni as the other midfielder, I think he's still got that inclination to really press on like he's got the freedom to, kind of thing, because previously that's kind of the role that he's played at Wimbledon, and so I think that it's really important that other midfielder next to Rodoni and behind Diarra, I think can carry a lot of ground and put in a lot of challenges, because otherwise you end up with a massive chasm where if Hogg doesn't feel he can be as aggressive as he used to be because he's getting on a bit, and you've got Rodoni and Diarra really high up the pitch, that can create a big sort of vacuum, which I felt like, I mean, with Romani Edmonds Green started at Plymouth Argyle, I felt like we saw a little bit of that at Home Park. So that's kind of the area that I would look at from an outside position and sort of think, can David Kasumi maybe step up to Hogg's mantle and sort of be that person that covers the ground and is aggressive, and because he's someone who can carry the ball up the pitch as well. But I think that athletic, destructive presence, I think, could be really important.
Mm-hmm. No, that's I think that's kind of where the fan base are at. Like they sit in midfield. And Gab, I suppose there's been a lot of talk. Sorry, Tom, I'll come to you shortly. But there's been a lot of talk about a striker and the need for a striker in the fan base. Do you see that, Gab? Do you think Town need to add there up front?
I think Danny Ward had a great season in 21-22, so I'd be reluctant to go against him on that, and maybe it's worth seeing what he can do under Warnock. But maybe is it possible you need another option up there? Who are the other strikers you've got, by the way? Just remind me.
Well, it's probably Cian Harrott and Carl Hudlin, so youngsters really, because Rhodes, he started the Carabao Cup, but I think everyone was quite surprised about that. I think the rumour is he's going to leave before the end of the window. So. Yeah,
maybe another striker then could be needed, but maybe just if only just to really push Danny Ward and give him another option, because obviously it's a big step up for Harrott and Hudlin, and if Ward gets injured, would you want to be putting all your faith in those two? I think that'd probably be more the question that I would ask more than over Danny Ward, possibly.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And Tom, I'm so sorry I interrupt you. You now have the floor is now yours. What would you like to say?
It's all right. I was just going to go off the back of Gab there and say I do think Kasumu is that answer to step up when Hogg, to take that role of Hogg. But just the problem with Kasumu is last season he did end up putting a really good run of games together. But it's kind of it's carbon copy almost last season, isn't it? He got injured right at the start of last season and was out for a few months, and then came back, and took him a few games to kind of put his name in the ring to be a bit more consistent in starting. So, but I do think he's the answer. But it's like I think, like we're touching on there, Gab, there's got to be just someone else who can slot in when you know you've got a player who, I mean, historically, even at Milton Keynes, he got injured quite a lot, didn't he? That was the one thing they said to us. It's like, great player, but he's prone to pick up an injury now and again. So it's like you've got to have those backups, haven't you? And Reg, unfortunately for Reg, he just looked off the pace, and that against the team that's just come up that's just a little bit more worrying, I think.
Do you think there's money in the budget to go for someone like Jonson Clark-Harris at Peterborough?
Oh, I'd like to think so. I doubt it, though. I mean, we have cleared the decks quite a bit, haven't we, to be fair, Tom?
Yeah.
Who knows?
There's a few names in League One that I think you could spend, 2 to 3 million on, and you'd be getting a very good player for a good few seasons, and then there's the potential of selling them on again, maybe as well, kind of thing. So
I like Sam Nombe at Exeter.
Oh, okay. Tell us a bit about him, Gab.
Yeah, he's a very City fans won't be happy with me saying that. He's a very athletic centre forward. He's full of running. Got a good leap on him. I think he scored a few goals as well last year, and he can provide as well. So I would say that would be quite a good option to bring in and rotate with Ward and Harris and Hudlin.
There you go. Well, if any of Town's transfer gurus are listening, here you go. We'll give you some players. Cool. So I mean, we're going back to the game on Saturday then. What do you kind of make of this, Tom, from a Huddersfield perspective in terms of the contest? Do you think we need to change our approach really from Leicester, or do you think you're quite happy with what you saw?
I'd pretty much be sticking with the same setup. I mean, you might tweak it a little bit because you're aware, be a bit more conservative, but I think the way Town played on Saturday was great. I'd probably, if it's 0-0 and the game's getting a bit more stretched, I'd maybe bring, if there's those opportunities in there, I'd be bringing the likes of Harrett and Hudlin on just that little bit earlier, I think, maybe. But other than that, no, I don't think anyone had a bad game. Do you know who I'm really liking the look of is the right back? I've just forgot his name. Edwards. Tom Edwards. Yeah, I'm really liking the look of him. I think he's turning out to be. He's reminding me of Tommy Smith a bit, like really kind of just reliable, solid defender who can get forward and do some stuff. But you know what I mean? His bread and butter is actually being able to defend, which I think as a fullback these days is a dying art sometimes. So I quite like the look of him now. Just such a shame with Nichols in it on Saturday. It's like Mr. Consistent, but he's, to be fair to him, he's saved us so many times. You can't expect him to be 100% all the time. Because he makes a save right at the end, doesn't he? And he's almost mad at himself for saving that and not the one that goes through his legs. But I probably wouldn't change the squad, to be honest, Brady, me.
No, it's interesting. And just touched on Nichols. Stephen Jiggy made a good point. Nichols actually had that start last season as well, didn't he? Like he dropped in a couple, I think it might have been Hull or Cardiff or both, but then just absolutely fine afterwards, wasn't he, until he got injured. So we'll let him off. Like you say, he's saved us so many times. So
be interesting to see how he reacts without Clem as his goalkeeper coach, though, potentially.
Look at you trying to cause some drama with him.
Well, yeah, let's see.
Good little podcaster you are. Gab, from Huddersfield viewpoint, then how do you rate their chances for the game on Saturday?
I think, as I say, the timing of this game is pretty good for Huddersfield. I think you're coming off the back of a really good performance against Leicester. Middlesbrough, I think, have issues up top. So while they've not been far off in recent games, they've still not got that kind of missing piece of the jigsaw and a couple of question marks over the fullback areas as well. So I think the timing is fairly favourable, but obviously in terms of quality, I think, and depth as well, I think Middlesbrough maybe have a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's interesting. Well, I suppose we're kind of getting to the end of this game now. So I'll come to your match predictions. So I'll jump in first. I feel like this is going to be classic. We'll take a 1-1 draw away from home and we'll get a point on the board and we'll be happy with that, and they'll kind of be happy with that. I feel like it's that. I'm going to go for Pearson to score from a set piece as well.
I misheard you then when you said I'm going to go for a piss.
No, right.
Yeah, it's not very professional.
Yeah, sorry. Say that to
my podcast before you do
it. But yeah, I'm going to go for Matty Pearson to score. But yeah, what about you, Gab? Are you going to give us a score that we're happy with, or are you going to take the piss? That's the question.
I'm going to go for 1-0 to Middlesbrough.
Okay. Oh, look at you being accurate and predicting.
I know.
Who? Well, I suppose we don't. We are doing a prediction this year, so we'll see. We'll see if you're right, but I hope you're wrong. So, but yeah, no, fair enough. Tom, what about yourself?
Look, I am only going off the fact it's Warnock away to Boro, so I think Town are going to win this 1-0.
Okay.
And I think it may, it'd be even more classic Warnock if he brought on like Kyle Hudlin and he scored winner. So yeah, let's go for that 1-0 and Hudlin.
Okay, I like it.
Jonny would be absolutely fuming at that.
He really would, especially when I told him in the cup game to watch out for Kyle Hudlin, and then he was messaging me like, "Oh yeah," and then he scored right at the end. I was like, "He still scored, consolation, but he still scored." Okay, okay, cool. Well, we've I've just heard we're heading into extra time on this podcast, so it's time for the mailbag. Fabulous. So, Gab, when our listeners were coming on, they were very excited to have you on. We've got quite a few questions, so I picked a couple here, but Mark Harrison asks, how does Gab have such an encyclopedic knowledge of the EFL, and what does he think needs to change for Town to stay up, having tipped us for relegation? So you got two questions in one there, Gab.
Yeah, I think first of all, I'm lucky enough to spend my time researching this because obviously writing about it is sort of my full-time job. So naturally, if something's your full-time job, you naturally find more time to sort of research things. So I guess that kind of answers the first one. In terms of what Huddersfield need, I'm, as much as I've praised Neil Warnock as a motivator, and I still think that some of the qualities he's had throughout his career are just timeless. There's also a bit of me that thinks it's probably slightly different technique coming in with 15 games to play, lifting everyone, using your man management qualities, whipping a team into shape. I feel like Warnock can do that at 74 with his eyes closed. But I think overseeing a full season, the big rebuild that the club needs, the demands of the job for more than just a third of the season, I don't know. I feel like that's a lot at his age. So there's part of me that has some concerns over that. Obviously, picking up on what Tom said about maybe not enough quality and depth. You've got sort of Hudlin and Harrott as your sort of backup centre forwards behind Ward, and although they've actually done well so far this season, I'm not sure they've necessarily fired on all cylinders at lower levels. So I maybe have some question marks over them at championship level. So I'm not 100% sure about the squad and how much of it is up to championship level. And I feel like there's a few players who I'm not sure are a championship level. I feel there's a few players who are, it's too early to tell, and they're maybe at an early stage of their careers. I think there's a few who are maybe past their best as well. So all in all, I have doubts over whether this Huddersfield squad is quite up to it. So then you need Neil Warnock to be the Neil Warnock we all know and love, as opposed to a more sort of aged version of him, which I suppose is the more realistic likelihood. So I'm a little bit worried.
No, I think that's fair. I think we've expressed some doubt on the podcast too. So that's fine. But people do love Neil Warnock, and I wouldn't go against him. But I think that's a really fair point. And we've kind of, not to bomb everyone out, but I think we've maybe seen that in the transfer window this so far, with us just getting a lot of short-term deals while the new owners get the feet on the ground, which is fair enough.
What do you think of the new owner? If you don't mind me going on a slight tangent, what do you think of them so far?
Well, it's interesting. I quite like him. I think he's trying to embrace himself in the culture, and I think he's done a good job. And he replies to a lot of fans online, and I think there's positives and negatives to that. But I think certainly has made himself very open and approachable, which I think is good, and that's kind of what we're used to at Huddersfield previously with Dean Hoyle, in the heyday. And I think he's good. I think the kind of thing, and we'll see, and I think this is the thing, we kind of need to be patient, and they've communicated this, which I think is good. But we've just had a lot of owners, Phil Hodgkinson, who was in charge, and then Dean came back. I think we've heard a lot of good talk, and I think this is kind of the period where we do need to see action, because we flirted with relegation a lot. So I think it's just giving them a bit of time to see that. And I think I'm under no illusion, and I've said it on this podcast, that I think we do need additions by the end of the window. Otherwise, we are going to struggle a lot this season. And I think we should see them. But I think he said a lot of the right things. And I think what's quite interesting is he sees a lot of potential into making the match day experience better, which not this is probably for another time, but I think certainly you look across Europe and other stadiums, and I think Town and there's a lot of things Town could do to make the match day experience.
Do you know what? I always think Huddersfield Town are at their best when you go with that kind of German approach. Like when you had David Wagner as manager, but you also seem to have a bit of a German vibe as a club, where it's like really affordable ticket prices, and fans were really active, during the game and creating a real atmosphere. And then there was that real sort of bond between the club and fans. I think Huddersfield Town need that, because that's what's allowed you to upset the odds in the past, certainly under Dean Hoyle. And I think that's that's going to be really important, because you're not a club that can spend your way out of this league. So you need to sort of get by with that sort of connection between fans and club. And hopefully you can find that under Nagel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're spot on there, Gab. That's kind of that's how we can upset the odds, and that's why we've been fortunate enough to see have the miracle of us getting promoted and us reaching a playoff final, when really we historically have one of the lowest wage budgets in the division, so we should be down there, which we are, when we don't have those light seasons that are kind of a bit of a red herring. But Tom, what do you think about the owner? Because I got put on the spot there, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
I think he's saying all the right things, he's asking all the right questions, but put it short and sweet. Talk's cheap, innit, Brady? We've had that kind of, I think when Hodgkinson came in, there was a lot of talk and then not a lot of delivery. So I kind of trust this guy, though. He's currently running a club in America successfully, and really there's loads of fan engagement, communities, the whole thing there. So I'm excited about it. It's different, isn't it? I'm as excited as I was when Hoyle took over the first time, I think, personally. Somewhat different. It could be a really good time for us. And I think, Gab, you're spot on. As long as you stick to that kind of the classic Huddersfield working class town, it's a community. That's how you win it over here. That's how you get the fans in. That's how you create the spirit there. The fans, all the fans want is that connection and the team that they know is going out there and giving their all. And and 9 times out of 10, I think when you look back at our history, when the fans are with the players, it works really well here. So if he gets that right, it's good. And then I just, like you said, Brady, making things around the stadium better, making the stadium better. They haven't done any, some of that stuff they haven't done to the stadium since it was built. And what is it? It's nearly 30 years old now, that stadium. So yeah, if they can just tie it up a little bit.
Yeah. Definitely. But yeah, no, a really good question, Gab. I've got another question for you. It's from Jay Bentley. He says it's going back to transfers, because we can talk about match day experience and all things, but we want to sign lots of expensive players. So Jay Bentley asks, if we get a loan in, what do you think Huddersfield need? Is it youth on the rise, like maybe a Tino Angerin or a Ken Kessler-Hayden, or do you think we need experience, like a Martin Maghorn, for example? Gab, what do you think Town need?
Yeah, well, I think Kesler Hayden has already gone to Plymouth Argyle, so that one might be out of the picture. But it'd be interesting to see what sort of route you go down. I would maybe say it depends if you want to operate with a narrow back four. I've got some reservations over whether Ruffles is quite up to championship level. Be interested to hear what either of you guys think, but I would, possibly look at a young, exciting, athletic left back, possibly.
No, I think Ruffles is. He's been a lot better under Warnock, but I do think before that he wasn't good, and we do have Jaheim Headley who's looked.
Oh yeah, I like Headley actually. That's a good point.
But I do wonder if he should be a bit further forward. I think he's more a wing back than like your traditional left back. I think that's a good point. Tom, what do you think we need? Because I think we've seen success when we've had like Levi Colwell, for example, or Bro, but I think we've got a lot of. The question I always get posted when I say like, it'd be good to. Huddersfield can only get someone with that talent level if they lock out of a Premier League like youngster. But I suppose the thing I always get thrown back is, but we have good young players. Look at Diarra, kind of thing.
Well, that's exactly what I was just going to say, Brady. I mean, like Headley, you brought up Headley there. I mean, Ruffles. I don't think Ruffles is that bad, Gab. But I think there is. You still get a bit twitchy now and again when he's defending, and he doesn't offer too much going forward. He weirdly has a miracle one game every something like 20 where he looks like, I don't know, Trent Alexander-Arnold, done he's steaming forward, scores worldy goals for some reason. But yeah, I'd just say I think sometimes we've got really lucky with some loans in the past, but we've also had players where I've just thought that they're no better than surely what we've got. And what's the point of having your B team, as it's called now, if you're not going to kind of give these lads a chance? I think Headley is good enough to give a shout. I think Ben Jackson is good enough to give a shout as a fullback. I think Osterfield is good enough to give a shout in the middle as well.
Do you know what? I saw him play for Morecambe once or twice last season. He looks like quite a classy operator. He's got a nice touch about him. So be interested to see if he gets an opportunity.
There you go.
So experience, that's my answer, sorry, to the question. Experience. We've already said it, haven't we, Gab, today? We need some experience, especially in the middle.
Yeah. Well done, gents. But that'll do us for the mailbag, and that'll do us for this episode. So Tom, thanks for coming on. Gab, thanks for coming on, and thank you to all the listeners who tune in as always. Tom and I will be back to preview the next game, but we will end it there by saying ta for now and up the town.